You're listening to The Bon Ree Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to The Bon Ree Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.net. You're listening to The Bon Ree Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. It's 8 in the evening, so we're going to be talking about the Constitution because the country is in such a mess of the corruption. It's quite interesting to find out how we got into such a mess and where it all started. It goes back actually to the beginning of the Republic after 1916. There was a constitution in the 1919 Constitution of the Republic, and the outcome was of the 1918 general election. It comprised of 32 counties of Ireland. So remember this as we go on. They say there was a constitution in 1922, but that was not a constitution. That was only merely acts and statutes, which meant nothing without the consent of the people. And they didn't have that. And then in 1937, Dev, which reminds me so much of Leo, both of them half Irish, both of them born outside Ireland. Well, Leo is thought to be born in India, but Dev was born in America. Complete traitors, really, really bad news. They're like sheep in wolf. They're wolves in sheep clothing. You know, people saw them as good. I don't know how anyone could see Dev as or Leo or Dev as good, but anyway, you know, they're very, very similar. Anyway, the 1937 Dev and the Archbishop John Mc Quaid, they wrote up a new one. Well, it wasn't a constitution. It was called plebiscite. With Dev's wisdom for monetary gain, as I said, he called it plebiscite of the 26. Dev refused to give the 6 to be given a vote on plebiscite, and he won by 1,500 votes. The plebiscite suddenly turned into a referendum by the people, giving Dev and the Archbishop control of our nation, resources of our oil, our gas, our minerals, our land, and especially water, by just changing the word from plebiscite to referendum. There was never a referendum by the Irish nation to change the 1919 Constitution of the Republic of Ireland, which safeguarded against Dev and his greed, and the Archbishop and the Church, all the greed that has continued on, and to this day you see why we have no country left. And in that constitution, that we would not be allowed to join another union, or it would be null and void, and that it wasn't our right that the government couldn't even get us to sign or even ask a referendum or election on whether we wanted to be in another union, because it wasn't ours to give. It was something that had to be passed on to future native Irish, and it was very much for the native Irish. So all these leftists would be having a shit fit as they make up about racism. Anyway, the 1919 Constitution clearly states we, the Irish people, own Ireland. The plebiscite was not a referendum. It was written by Dev and the Church. The only constitution is the Supreme Constitution of the 1919, written by the Irish people for the Irish people, not the corruption actions, and not for corruption, but for the heroes of the 1960. When they wrote the Constitution, their only thoughts was for the native Irish. And it clearly sets out resources belong to the Irish native people, and not the corruption and the criminal politicians that we see today, particularly. Breathe the Supreme Constitution of the 1919 and Dev's corruption of the 1937. There's a massive difference. And another interesting thing, I like this, Michael Collins was our first Minister for Finance. He arrived into the first cabinet meeting to see the ministers scoffing food delivered by the Dublin finest restaurants. He took the costs from their wages. We've come from great leaders to destruction from Dev. Dev was the first. But what we see now with Leo and the EU and their puppets in the doll is complete destruction of what that 1919 Supreme Constitution of Ireland was about. And it was 32. They gave everybody in Ireland a voice to speak up what the future of Ireland should be. When Dev took over, as I said, it was only the 26th, but there was no constitution. It's pretty bad. It's scary. We need to look into also what King George of the 1922 and his holes on Ireland he put by. But there may be some loopholes of even using that if we had some clever lawyers. But all we really need to do is disregard everything and go back to the Constitution of 1999. Because that's the Supreme Constitution of the island together. Thank you for listening on the Bon Ree Show. It's a quick show today. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the corruption of the EU. Thank you for listening. If you have anything to say or you want to talk about anything, you want to bring up anything, you want to talk about the absolutely scary days we're living in and our country completely gone and nobody standing up. Okay, we've got a bit of noise from the yellow vests. But there really isn't anybody out there standing up for the corruption of what has taken place to our country. It's very, very sad days. Thank you for listening on the Bon Ree Show.
You are listening to Irish News Radio at irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.